On the night of our 5th wedding anniversary, the Shun family's hillside villa was as silent as a massive tomb, with only the occasional crackle of sparks leaping in the fireplace. As if mourning the 5 years I had spent as a full-time housewife, I wore a carefully chosen silk gown, an apron tied around my waist. Having spent 4 hours busily preparing in the kitchen, on the table were Shun Huiqing's favorite French foie gras and a bottle of Bordeaux wine. I had deliberately kept the main lights off, lighting only a few scented candles. The flickering flames cast a glow on the enormous wedding photo hanging on the wall. The man in the picture was cold and aloof, his deep eyes captivating. I once believed that if I were gentle enough, I could eventually warm that icy demeanor to surprise him. I decided to go to his study and place the tie I had spent half a year embroidering into his drawer. The study was filled with the faint scent of fur, a fragrance unique to Shun Huiqing. I pulled open the left drawer of the desk, only to discover a slightly raised hidden compartment at the very back. As if guided by some unseen force, my fingertips pressed down on it. With a soft click, the compartment sprang open. Inside, there were no business secrets, only a slightly yellowed photograph tucked away in the corner. In the photo, Shun Huiqing's perpetually icy face actually wore a gentle smile I had never seen before. He held a delicate woman in his arms, and the woman held the hand of a little boy about 5 years old, whose eyes and brows were a miniature version of Shun Huiqing's. On the back of the photo, 2 words were written in pen: "Our home, home." I smiled bitterly, my heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand, the pain so intense that even breathing carried a taste of blood. In this villa, I served his daily needs like a high-end nanny. To accommodate his allergies, I hadn't touched my favorite seafood for 5 years. To maintain the dignity of Mrs. Shun, I gave up my once promising career in architectural design. It turns out, all I was guarding was an empty shell. His home had already taken root elsewhere 5 years ago. Just then, heavy footsteps and the sharp voice of Shun's mother echoed from outside the door. "Su Man, haven't you died in the kitchen yet? Huiqing is back. Hurry up and come out to serve." Mother Shun pushed the door open and entered. Seeing me standing in the middle of the study, her face instantly darkened. "Who allowed you to enter the study? If any of these business secrets go missing, can you afford to compensate for it?" Before I could even put away the photo, Shun Huiqing's tall and straight figure appeared at the door. He tugged at his tie, his cool gaze sweeping over my pale face before finally landing on the photo in my hand. At that moment, I thought he would panic, but he merely raised an eyebrow slightly, a flicker of impatience flashing in his eyes. "Since you've seen it, it saves me the trouble of explaining." He walked over and sat down behind the desk, his posture lofty, as if I were just an insignificant subordinate. Mother Shun rushed over, snatched the photo away, and glared at me with disgust. "So what if you saw it? Su Man, you need to know your place. Lin Yuro gave birth to a healthy baby boy for Huiqing. And you, after 5 years of marriage, you haven't even laid an egg. If you know what's good for you, just keep being the obedient Mrs. Shun and stay out of outside affairs." I looked at Mother Shun's face, which was filled with disdain, and then turned my gaze to Shun Huiqing. His slender fingers tapped on the table as he spoke coldly. "Huining is 5 years old this year and should start elementary school. I plan to bring them back to live in the country. Su Man, you've always been obedient. As long as you behave yourself, the position of Mrs. Shun will still be yours. But here is an agreement, sign it." He handed over a piece of paper, on which was boldly written marital property notarization and full-time housewife duties supplementary agreement. The content of the agreement was utterly humiliating. I must unconditionally accept the presence of Lin Yuro and her son, and I must give up all dividend rights from the Shun Group, with my monthly allowance reduced to 20,000 yuan. 20,000 yuan, I repeated softly, laughing at myself. "Shun Huiqing, this nightgown I'm wearing costs 30,000. Are you trying to make me go on welfare? What else can you do besides spending money?" Mother Shun sneered from the side. "If it weren't for Huiqing supporting you all these years, your dilapidated Su family would have long been wiped out from the business world. You should know how to repay kindness. Don't be ungrateful when given face." Shun Huiqing raised his head, his eyes exuding a chilling sense of oppression. "Su Man, don't try to test my patience. This agreement is for your protection and Also an explanation to the Shin family: if you don't agree, you won't be able to bear the consequences. I stared at his indifferent face, and the grief and anger in my chest miraculously subsided at that moment. It was the dead silence that follows extreme disappointment. 5 years of effort, in his eyes, were nothing more than a transaction that could be measured in money, without even room for negotiation. Fine, I'll sign. I lowered my head, hiding the cold glint surging in my eyes. I walked toward the desk and casually picked up a stylish black pen from the pen holder. Shen Huiqing didn't notice that this pen was one I bought at an auction last month, equipped with the most advanced miniature recording and cloud syncing chip. I carefully wrote Su Man's name on the agreement, stroke by stroke. That's more like it, Mrs. Shen wore a triumphant smile and reached for the agreement, but I blocked her hand. Since I've signed, I have a small request as well. I looked at Shen Huiqing, my tone eerily calm. To welcome the family back, I want to renovate the garden. I need a bit of peace and quiet these next few days. Could you all stay at the old house for a while? Shen Huiqing was clearly pleased with my acceptance of the situation. He stood up, his tone softening slightly. Fine. Assistant Lin will send you Lin Yuro's address. When you have time, go meet her and learn the household rules. I will. I lowered my gaze, hiding the cruel curve at the corner of my mouth. After they left, the villa fell into a deathly silence. I took off my apron, walked to the dining table, grabbed that expensive bottle of Bordeaux wine, and took several large gulps straight from the bottle. The spicy liquid slid down my throat, as if igniting some long-dormant ambition. I walked into the bathroom and turned the cold water on full blast. Under the icy impact, I dialed a number I hadn't contacted in 5 years. Ju Cheng, it's Su Man. There was a full 10 seconds of silence on the other end of the phone, followed by a low, sharp male voice. Miss Su, you're finally awake. Help me with a few things. I looked at the woman in the mirror, whose face was still stunningly beautiful but whose eyes had turned as cold as frost. First, find out all the recent transactions related to that billion-dollar project at Shen Corporation. Second, I want all the information on Lin Yuru and that child, down to the smallest detail. Third, help me get in touch with the butler at the Su family's old mansion. Tell him that the daughter of the Su family is coming back. After hanging up the phone, I walked out of the bathroom and stood before the enormous wedding photo. Shen Huiqing, did you think I was a canary you kept in a cage? I picked up the red wine glass on the table and smashed it hard against Shen Huiqing's face in the photo. But you forgot, before I married you, I was the youngest chief actuary at Su Corporation. Every brick and tile of the Shen Empire you're so proud of, I know exactly how to tear it down. I returned to the bedroom and turned on the computer. The glow of the screen illuminated my pale face as I began frantically writing code. Through the data synchronized from that voice recorder, every secret call Shen Huiqing made in the study and the flow of every illegal fund began to unfold before me. Just then, the doorbell rang. Through the surveillance camera, I saw Assistant Lin standing at the door with a woman in a white dress who looked fragile and delicate. Lin Yuro. She couldn't even wait a little longer before coming to flaunt her presence. I sneered, then put on a fragile, frightened expression and slowly opened the door. Madam, this is Miss Lin, Mr. Shen said. Before Assistant Lin could finish speaking, Lin Yuro pushed the door open and walked in. She scanned the luxurious living room, her eyes unable to conceal their greed. Sister, from now on, we'll be one family. Lin Yuro smiled innocently, but her voice was like the flickering tongue of a venomous snake. Huiqing said the decor of this house is too tacky. He asked me to oversee the renovations. You won't mind, will you? I looked at her, my heart completely unmoved, even feeling the urge to laugh. Since this act is going to be played out, I'll see it through to the end with you. How could I mind? I stepped forward and took her hand, secretly hiding a miniature tracking patch in my palm. Since it's Huiqing's wish, you can thoroughly renovate every inch of this place. I deliberately emphasized the pronunciation of the words. Good, good. In their eyes, I was the frightened, abandoned wife who could only rely on obedience to maintain my position, but in my eyes, they were already a group of prey stepping into a trap. The first step of revenge is not to cry or make a scene, but to make them believe that I have completely broken down. Lin Yuro moved through the villa like a mistress inspecting her territory, her fingertips gliding over the imported Italian leather sofa as she remarked with disdain, "This color is too oppressive, change it to a cream tone." Huiqing said the child prefers a brighter environment. I stood humbly to the side, nervously twisting my apron, and meekly agreed, "All right, whatever you say, as long as Huiqing is happy, any changes are fine." Assistant Lin watched my submissive demeanor with a hint of disdain in his eyes. To him, the once spirited and ambitious Miss Su had long since lost all her sparkle amidst 5 years of pots and pans, becoming nothing more than a parasite who only knew how to read her husband's moods. "Madam, since you have no objections, I'll take Miss Lin to see the master bedroom first." Mr. Shen instructed that the mattress in the master bedroom should be replaced with a spine-supporting one. Assistant Lin added stiffly. I lowered my head, my voice trembling ever so slightly. "The master bedroom, all right, go ahead, I'll go to the garden for some fresh air." The moment I turned around, the timidity in my eyes vanished completely, replaced by an icy calm. I hurried into the greenhouse, locked the door behind me, and dug up a waterproof metal box from deep within the soil. Inside was a globally limited edition, specially designed computer. The screen lit up, and Zhu Cheng's message popped up. "President Su, we've found out, Shen Huiqing's so-called 100 billion Project Aurora plan actually stole the underlying technical framework from the unfinished project you left behind in the Su family lab years ago. Moreover, to cover the funding gap for research and development, he embezzled 3 billion from the Shen family's charity fund without authorization." My slender fingers flew across the keyboard, my gaze as cold as a blade. 3 billion. Shen Huiqing is truly insatiable. Does he think I've spent the last 5 years at home just studying recipes? He's forgotten that I personally wrote the Su family's internal defense system back in the day. I accessed the Shen Group's internal financial network. The recording pen left in the study was continuously transmitting the conversation between Shen Huiqing and his overseas financial advisor. "Yes, list that account under technology R&D subsidies for now. Once Su Man signs that agreement, the original shares under her name will become dead stock, and we can dilute them anytime." Shen Huiqing's voice carried a cold, calculated ruthlessness. I let out a cold laugh, trying to dilute my shares. "Shen Huiqing, you probably don't know that the name I signed on that agreement was written with a special fading ink. 24 hours later, aside from your signature, that piece of paper will be completely blank, and the fingerprint I pressed was actually covered with a nanofilm. So what was collected was your own biometric information." Shen Huiqing. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a WeChat message from Su Man, a selfie. She was wearing my silk nightgown, lying on the wedding bed I shared with Shen Huiqing, with the caption, "Sis, this bed really is more comfortable than the one I used to sleep on. No wonder Huiqing always says he doesn't want to come home. Turns out he was saving the best for me." I didn't reply to the message. Instead, I sent her a 50,000 yuan red envelope with the note, "Thanks for taking care of Huiqing. Buy something nice to nourish yourself." The red envelope was quickly claimed. Immediately after, Su Man's smug voice followed, "Oh, sister is really generous. I heard the Shen family is cutting back on your expenses. TSK, I think you'd better beg me more. Maybe when I officially enter the family, I can leave you a maid's room." I whispered softly at the screen. "Su Man, take more. The more you take, the higher you climb, and the louder you'll fall." I quickly contacted Zhu Cheng. "Zhu Cheng, help me arrange a meeting with Qin Feng from Cloud Law Firm, that overseas subsidiary Starlight Technology that Shen Huiqing has been trying to acquire. It's actually been under my actual control all along." "Right. Yes, MS, Su, that company has been nominally losing money for years, but in reality, it holds the 3 core patents of the Aurora project. Shen Huiqing thinks it's a mess and is planning to dump it on you in the divorce settlement to offset alimony." "Very well." I gazed at the withered roses blooming outside the window. "Since he wants to dump the trash on me, I'll grant his wish. I'll make him personally and respectfully hand over the lifeblood of the Shen Group to me." Night had deepened. After Lin Euro and assistant Lin left, the villa returned to a deathly silence. Instead of resting, I infiltrated Shen Huiqing's private computer. I discovered a hidden folder containing evidence of all the tax evasion by the Shen Group over the past 3 years. He had compiled these into 2 ledgers. with the real one stored on a physically isolated USB drive using infrared sensing to locate it. I found the USB drive hidden behind a photo frame labeled Home in the study Shun Huiqing, Ocean Huiqing. You thought the warmest place was the safest, but you never knew it was the place I hated most. I tiptoed into the study and retrieved the USB drive. At that moment, a sudden flash of lightning streaked across the window, followed by a roar of thunder. Standing in the darkness, I gazed at the family photo in the frame, a testament to Shun Huiqing's betrayal of me, and the gallows he had built for himself. I cloned all the data from the USB drive and placed it back exactly as it was. The next morning, Shun Huiqing pushed the door open and entered. He still carried the faint scent of perfume, the cheap, cloyingly sweet fragrance that Su Man always wore. He saw me sitting at the dining table, calmly peeling an egg, seemingly unbothered by Lin Yuro's intrusion last night. I've already taken the agreement, Su Man, you've performed well. Shun Huiqing pulled out a chair and sat down, his tone carrying a hint of condescending satisfaction. As for Lin Yuro, moving in, I'll arrange it in a few days. If you feel wronged, you can go to the Maldives to relax. I'll cover the expenses. I looked up, offering a sorrowful smile. Huiqing, I don't want to travel, I just want to stay by your side, even if it's just helping you keep an eye on the company. Didn't you say before that Xingyuan technology is losing a lot of money? Give it to me. I want to learn how to do business, so I won't be laughed at by relatives when I return to the Su family in the future. Shun Huiqing paused his egg peeling for a moment, then let out a light scoff. You want to do business? That's a bottomless pit, losing tens of millions every year. It's okay, consider it as me paying tuition. I humbly tugged at his sleeve. Please, give me a little sense of security, okay? Shun Huiqing stared at me for a long time, probably thinking that a discarded woman who only relied on him couldn't cause any trouble, or perhaps feeling that using a loss-making company to completely silence me was a worthwhile deal. Fine, the lawyer will bring the transfer contract tomorrow. Su Man, this is the last time I indulge your willfulness. Once you sign this transfer contract, all the original shares of the Shun Group under your name will be pledged to the company. Do you understand? Understood. I nodded obediently, a hint of madness hidden in my eyes. Shun's original shares? That's nothing but a castle in the air. The patents held by Stellar Source Technology are the real gold and silver that can strangle Shun's neck. After finishing breakfast, Shun Huiqing straightened his suit and left without looking back. He didn't know that the moment he stepped out of the house, I had already encrypted and sent evidence of Shun Group's illegal misappropriation of charity funds to the inboxes of several top international auditors. I stood up, took off the plain apron that symbolized the identity of Mrs. Shun, and threw it into the trash can. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and dialed the number of the butler at the Su family's old mansion. Old Chen, restart the server I used to have in the lab. Also, notify all the old subordinates of the Su Group to meet on the top floor of the Green Dragon building in 3 days. The voice on the other end of the line trembled with excitement. Miss, you're really coming back? Yes. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, my eyes as cold as frost. Tell them that the Su family's eldest daughter isn't dead. She's just been sharpening her blade in the abyss for 5 years. At the same time, I received a surveillance alert on my tablet. Su Man was swaggering into the headquarters building of the Shun Group with the child, arrogantly announcing to the front desk, I am Mr. Shun's future wife. And this is the young master of the Shun family. Watching the woman in the video, who was beside herself with glee, a faint smile curled at the corner of my lips. Let her make a scene, the bigger, the better. At the peak of Shun Huiqing's glory, when he believes he is about to reach the summit of the billion-dollar project, I will personally sever all his support. Since he wants a family, I will let him, his illegitimate child, his mistress, and his greed slowly build their family together in prison. The celebration banquet for the 15th anniversary of the Shun Group was held at the city's most luxurious Grand Hyatt Hotel. Shun Huiqing reserved the entire top floor to celebrate the official launch of his long-planned Aurora project. I wore a simple, elegant moon-white cheongsam, the gentle and virtuous style that Shun's mother loved most. To make the act more convincing, I even brushed a faint layer of red at the corners of my eyes, making me look like a bullied young wife who had just been crying but had to force a smile. Oh, isn't this Su Man? Shin's mother walked over, surrounded by a group of wealthy socialites. Today, she was dressed like a peacock in full display, as if she wanted to hang all her jewelry on herself. I thought you were hiding at home crying. I didn't expect you to have the nerve to show up. I lowered my eyes, my voice as faint as a mosquito's hum. Mom, on such an important day, I should be here to support Huiqing. Help. You're lucky if you don't embarrass the Shin family. Mrs. Shin snorted coldly, lowering her voice to threaten me by my ear. Miss Lin will be arriving soon. She's a great contributor to Huiqing's success. Be sensible and stay in the side hall. Don't offend the distinguished guest. I obediently nodded and retreated to a corner of the banquet hall. At that moment, Shin Huiqing stood on the stage, delivering a speech with high spirits. His cool and aloof demeanor appeared particularly captivating under the spotlight. Like an emperor who held the power of life and death, the Aurora project is not only the pinnacle of the Shin Group but also the future of the entire industry. He raised his glass in a toast, and the entire hall erupted in applause. However, the moment he stepped off the stage, something unexpected happened. Su Man had actually changed into a bright red backless evening gown and swaggered past the security. She didn't follow Mrs. Shin's arrangement to go to the side hall but instead appeared right in the center of the banquet. Even more astonishingly, she had brought that 5-year-old child with her. Huiqing, how could such a wonderful day be complete without me and Xiao Ning? Su Man laughed boldly, her voice echoing throughout the hall. The banquet hall instantly fell so quiet that you could hear a pin drop. Everyone's gaze shifted back and forth between me and Su Man. Shin Huiqing's face darkened immediately, and a chilling coldness that could freeze a person to death began to spread around him. Su Man, who gave you permission to come out? Mrs. Shin panicked and rushed over to pull her back, but Su Man wasn't so easy to dismiss. She slapped her thigh and began shouting like a market shrew. Mom, didn't you just praise Xiao Ning for being clever and say he's the future successor of the Shin family? How come you're turning your back on him now? Even if Sister Su Man is here, I have to say it, the position of Mrs. Shin should rightfully belong to the one who gave birth to a son. The entire room erupted in an uproar. Shin Huiqing's business rivals all wore amused smiles, seeing that the timing was just right. I slowly stepped out from the corner, staggering slightly, my eyes red as I looked at Shin Huiqing. Huiqing, is this the child of your friend you mentioned? Why is he calling you dad? Su Man, calm down. Shin Huiqing frowned deeply, his eyes filled with warning. I won't calm down. I gave up everything for you, slaved away for the Shin family for 5 years. I suddenly raised my voice, my tone sharp and piercing, my acting skills reaching their peak. Mom, when you made me wash your feet, you said that as long as I obeyed, Huiqing would come back to me. But now, they're going to kick me out on my wedding anniversary. What? Washing feet? The surrounding guests began to whisper among themselves. Shin's mother flushed with anger, pointing at me in a fluster. You crazy woman, what nonsense are you spouting? I'm not talking nonsense, I cried, while precisely pulling out a folded IOU from my handbag. This is the 10 million you lost playing cards last month, Mom, which you asked me to go back to my family to raise, saying it was for Huiqing's cash flow. Huiqing, you said you'd pay me back once you got the patent for the Aurora project. Now that the patent is in hand, where's the money? This IOU was real, except it was a predatory loan I had long planned for Mother Shin to sign. Shin Huiqing's face had darkened to the point where it seemed like water could drip from it. He cared most about appearances, and right now, I was tearing down the Shin family's fig leaf piece by piece in front of everyone. Enough. Take all 3 of them to the lounge, Shin Huiqing growled. Assistant Lin quickly stepped forward with the bodyguards. I pretended to be overwhelmed by fright, slipped on my feet, and just happened to fall into Shin Huiqing's arms. In that very second, I leaned close to his ear and whispered in a voice only the 2 of us could hear, coquettishly murmuring, Huiqing, the recording pen is on me. The patent loophole you mentioned to Mr. Chen after drinking just now, I'm afraid the entire nation's media is about to hear it. Want me not to release it? Then give me an explanation in public. Shin Huiqing's body stiffened abruptly, his pupils contracted as if shaken by an earthquake, and he stared at me intently. He couldn't believe that the woman who had been submissive in front of him for 5 years would dare to turn the tables on him at this moment. He looked at the reporters below, already armed with their cameras and microphones, then back at me in his arms, my eyes cold, yet a faint smile playing at the corners of my lips. To save the Shun family's stock price, he gritted his teeth, forced out a doting smile, wrapped his arm around my waist, and spoke loudly into the microphone. "Everyone, my wife has been under a lot of pressure lately due to pregnancy preparations, and her emotions have been a bit unstable. I apologize for the scene. As for this Miss Lin, she is just an employee of the company, and the child is the result of a misunderstanding. I will handle it properly. Su Man is and always will be." The lady of the Shun group, Su Man, froze, looking at Shun Huiqing in disbelief. "Huiqing, you clearly said, 'Take her away.'" Shun Huiqing's voice was as cold as ice. The bodyguards roughly dragged Su Man and the child away. Shun's mother, overwhelmed with shame, also slipped away, claiming she felt unwell due to heart issues. The dinner party continued. Shun Huiqing had no choice but to take me around to toast, maintaining his persona as a wife-doting maniac during the toasting process. I took advantage of his forced cooperation to skillfully guide him towards several key investors. "Mr. Chen, Huiqing often praises your sharp insight. He said that without the foundational data support from the Su family back then, the Aurora project would never have gotten off the ground. Now that I've taken over stellar source technology under the Su group, I hope you'll look out for me in our future collaborations." I smiled as I raised my glass. Shun Huiqing's knuckles turned white as he gripped his glass, but he could only force a smile. "Yes, Man has grown up now and wants to learn how to manage the company. Please be patient with her." He had no idea that amidst the light-hearted conversation, I had already planted a seed of doubt in the investors' minds. Could it be that the core technology of the Shun family was actually obtained by relying on the support of the original wife? And, it seems the ownership of the technology is still in Su Man's hands. At the end of the banquet, Shun Huiqing threw me into the back seat of the stretch limousine. "Su Man, you've grown quite bold." He gripped my chin in the darkness, his breath ragged. "Do you think having that recording can threaten me? Do you believe those investors would actually trust you?" I leaned against his chest, my slender little finger hooking onto his tie, my tone as light as discussing the weather. "Whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. What matters is, Shun Huiqing, just now when you were playing along with my act, my people have already completed a global patent blockade on all the core algorithms of the Aurora project. Now, without my authorization, every time the Shun group starts a server, they're just sending money my way." I pushed him away, elegantly smoothing my disheveled hair at the temples. "Tomorrow at 10 in the morning, meet me at the Civil Affairs Bureau." I looked at him, my eyes devoid of any affection, only a deathly calm. "I've drafted a new divorce agreement. I want the 40% of Shun Corporation's retail shares. If you refuse, I'll make sure you watch Shun Corporation's stock price hit the limit down within 10 minutes of the market opening." "You're dreaming," Shun Huiqing roared. I didn't say a word, just opened my phone and showed him a live surveillance feed. Su Man was kneeling at the entrance of the Shun family villa, being scolded by Mrs. Shun, who was tearing up the betrothal gifts originally prepared for Lin Euro. "Shun Huiqing, did you think you were bringing them back to live a life of luxury?" I sneered. "In reality, I've just found them a grave where they can torment each other. Now, it's your turn." Outside the window, the moonlight was as clear as water, and Shun Huiqing's business empire had already begun to show its first crack in the foam of that champagne. The air outside the Civil Affairs Bureau carried a chill, as if after a rain. When Shun Huiqing stepped out of the Rolls-Royce with its consecutive license plates, he exuded an aura of hostility that kept others at a distance. Dark circles faintly shadowed the skin around his eyes, clearly from staying up all night trying to break through my patent blockade, but the result was obvious. He had failed. "Su Man, you truly make me see you in a new light." He strode up to me, slamming the thick stack of divorce papers onto the hood, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Using such underhanded tactics to force me to relinquish power, is this what you call the Su family upbringing?" Today, I deliberately wore a sharp, deep blue suit dress, with sunglasses hiding all the emotion in my eyes. I didn't even glance at him, just casually trimmed my nails. "Mr. Shun, in the business world, only results matter, not the methods. That's what you taught me. As for upbringing, Compared to you raising a child out of wedlock, my little patent counterattack is practically a textbook example of gentleness, kindness, respect, and restraint. You, Shen Huiqing was left speechless, his face turning ashen. Assistant Lin, sweating profusely, unzipped his briefcase nearby, looking at me with a complicated expression. Madam, Mr. Shen has already cleared all the debts of Xingyuan Technology as you requested and transferred 3 core manufacturing plants under the Shen Group to you. But those 40% of retail shares, they concern the controlling stake of the Shen Group. Mr. Shen hopes you'll reconsider. I took off my sunglasses and gave Assistant Lin a cold glance. Assistant Lin, it's time to change how you address me. And let me be clear, I'm not here to negotiate with you. I'm delivering an ultimatum. It's 9:45 now, and the market opens in 15 minutes. If I don't have the signed equity transfer agreement by 10:00 sharp, news about Shen Group's Aurora project allegedly infringing on intellectual property rights will be precisely pushed to every shareholder's phone. Shen Huiqing stared at me intently, his eyes filled with a murderous intent so palpable it seemed to solidify. He was used to controlling everything, used to me revolving around him. This sense of losing control drove him almost to the brink of madness. Su Man, do you really think those old foxes will respect you once you leave me? The Su Group is nothing but an empty shell now. He gritted his teeth, picked up the pen, and signed his name with 2 cold, detached strokes at the end of the agreement. That's no longer your concern, Mr. Shen. I collected the agreement and walked into the Civil Affairs Bureau without looking back. Half an hour later, 2 dark red divorce certificates lay on the table. Shen Huiqing didn't even glance at them, snorting coldly. Su Man, I'll be waiting for you to come back and beg me. When that time comes, it won't be as simple as kneeling down to wash my feet. I let out a light laugh and, right in front of him, pulled out the old wedding dress I had always kept with me from my bag. It was the one he had casually pointed to in a bridal shop window 5 years ago, yet I had treasured it and worn it for 5 years. Beg you. I lifted a corner of the wedding dress, and with a sudden, forceful tug of both hands, a sharp rip echoed through the air as the snow-white lace tore apart. Like a long-overdue funeral, I tossed the torn remnants of the wedding dress into the nearby trash bin and turned around. A black Hongqi sedan bearing the license plate of the Su family's old estate was already parked steadily by the roadside. Mr. Shen, goodbye, and farewell forever. I got into the car, and as the window slowly rolled up, Shen Huiqing's face, filled with gloom, disappeared from view. Miss, are we heading back to the company? The driver, old Chen, asked with a choked voice. No, let's go back to the old mansion first. I leaned back in the leather seat, closing my eyes to rest. Grandfather has been waiting for me for a long time. The Su family's ancestral home was nestled deep in the Wutong trees on the outskirts of the city, exuding an air of ancient solemnity and dignity. When I pushed open the intricately carved gate, the elderly Master Su, who was rumored to be bedridden, was sitting on a stone stool in the courtyard, leisurely brewing tea. Back. Grandfather didn't even look up, his voice deep and powerful. I'm back. I knelt by his knees, and the pent-up grievances of 5 years turned into tears in that moment, though I quickly wiped them away. That kid from the Shen family is too green. Grandfather took a sip of tea, his gaze sharp. He thinks swallowing a few of the Su family's projects will let him dominate everything. But he doesn't know that the true foundation of the Su family has never been in those financial reports. It's right here. Grandpa handed me an ancient black gold card and a list. On the list were all the top figures who had emerged from the Su family and were now spread across the global finance and technology industries. For the past 5 years, I've been pretending to be ill to see if you could break through your cocoon and become a boat. Grandpa patted the back of my hand. Man, the command of the Su family is yours from today onward. I took the list, and at that moment, the blood in my veins seemed to boil once again. At the same time, at the headquarters of the Shen Group, Shen Huiqing had just entered his office when Su Man burst in, sobbing and dragging a child along. Huiqing, your mother is trying to throw me out. She says you're divorced now, and I have no rightful place here. She even wants to cut my living expenses in half. Su Man clutched at Shen Huiqing's sleeve, her face streaked with tears. Get out. Shen Huiqing shoved her away violently. sending the documents on the desk scattering across the floor. I'm not dead yet, Assistant Lin. Take her away. Send her to the apartment in the suburbs, and don't let her out without my permission. Huiqing, you've changed. You never treated me like this before. Su Man collapsed to the floor, her eyes wide with fear. Shun Huiqing ignored her, his gaze fixed on the computer screen. 10 minutes after the market opened, Shun Group's stock price remained eerily stable. Just as he breathed a sigh of relief, a breaking news alert popped up. Su Group restructuring announcement. Former Mrs. Shun, Su Man, officially takes over as chairman and announces that Su Group has completed an absolute controlling stake in 3 of Shun Group's core upstream and downstream contract manufacturers. Shun Huiqing's phone rang incessantly, all calls from creditors and suppliers demanding payment. Su Man, he stared at the professional photo of me on the screen, dressed in a suit with a sharp, determined gaze, and his palms began to sweat. He finally realized that what I took away was not some perennially loss-making subsidiary, but the very foundation of his Shun family empire. At this moment, I stood at the top of the Su family building, overlooking the dazzling lights of the entire city. Miss, all the major media outlets have arrived and are waiting for your comeback debut. Zhu Cheng pushed the door open, his eyes filled with fervor. I straightened my collar and walked toward the spotlight. Shun Huiqing, Mrs. Shun is already dead. The Su Man of today is an opponent you can no longer hope to match. On the day I returned to the top floor of the Su Group building, the entire city seemed to hold its breath in anticipation of this queen's return. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling window, I watched the endless stream of traffic below. Once, I was merely the beloved granddaughter of the Su family patriarch here, but now, I am a player in the game, bearing the weight of my family's rise and fall. With a sharp blade in hand, Zhu Cheng pushed the door open and handed me the latest industry report. The Shun Group is moving fast. To reassure the shareholders, Shun Huiqing actually announced that the Aurora project will launch 2 months ahead of schedule, promising that the first batch of products will cover 50% of the world's smart terminals. Zhu Cheng adjusted his glasses, his gaze sharp, but he doesn't know that his core manufacturing plants now bear the Su family name. I took a light sip of the bitter coffee, allowing its sharpness to spread across my tongue before it transformed into a wave of clarity. He's just making a last-ditch effort. Inform the heads of those 3 factories that, from now on, they are entering an equipment upgrade and maintenance period. The timeline is tentatively set for indefinitely, not a single screw from Shun Huiqing's orders is to be shipped. Understood. A cruel smile curled at the corner of Zhu Cheng's lips. By 3 in the afternoon, the headquarters of Shun Group had descended into chaos. Shun Huiqing was roaring into the phone. What do you mean, maintenance period? Just yesterday, you said everything was running smoothly, and today the entire line is shut down. I can afford the penalty fees, but I need the goods, right now. The voice on the other end of the phone was cold and mechanical. Sorry, Mr. Shun, our major shareholder, MS. Su, has stated that in response to environmental protection and technological innovation, all old production lines must be dismantled and rebuilt. We will transfer the penalty fee to your account as per the contract. Please check. Shun Huiqing slammed the phone down, his chest heaving violently. Before he could recover from the shock, his secretary rushed in, flustered. Mr. Shun, the Su Group, Su Man has personally brought people here. They're downstairs, saying they want to discuss the patent licensing issue with you. Let her come up. Shun Huiqing gritted his teeth. A moment later, the elevator doors opened. I stepped out in 10-centimeter red-soled high heels, followed by a group of top-tier lawyers and auditors in tailored suits. The executives of the Shun Group, who had once looked down on me, now fell silent, not even daring to lift their heads. I walked straight into Shun Huiqing's office, sat down in the leather swivel chair opposite him, crossed my long legs, and assumed a relaxed posture. President Shun, you don't look too well, I said, raising an eyebrow as I looked at him, my tone as casual as if we were catching up. Didn't get enough rest last night. Well, it's understandable. Juggling a mistress and an illegitimate child while worrying about a company on the brink of bankruptcy must be exhausting. Su Man, don't go too far. Shun Huiqing leaned forward, his hands braced on the desk, his once Cold eyes, which I had once been infatuated with, now filled with rage. Cutting off my supply chain is a move that hurts you as much as it hurts me. If the factory shuts down, Su Corporation will suffer losses too. Losses. I took a document from Zhu Cheng and gently pushed it toward him. Take a look at this. President Shun, it's the Global Intelligence Initiative Strategic Agreement I signed just half an hour ago. My factory has fully transitioned to producing next-generation chips, and orders are already booked through next year. As for your Aurora project, it's nothing but a pile of outdated scrap metal. I can afford the losses, but can you afford to wait? Shen Huiqing glanced at the document, his pupils suddenly contracting. What he prided himself on as the future was, in my eyes, nothing more than outdated. Just then, the office door was abruptly pushed open. Huiqing, you have to save me. Su Man rushed in with a tearful face, clutching a pile of luxury shopping bags, followed by several fierce-looking bodyguards. The people at the mall have gone mad. They said my black card was frozen and even confiscated all the things I bought right in front of everyone. I turned around, looked at this woman who had once disgusted me to the core, and revealed a faint, pitying smile. Miss Su, that card is a corporate subsidiary card of the Shun Group. Now that the Shun Group is suspected of serious financial misconduct, all associated accounts are under the supervision of the audit office. The fact that the mall didn't send you straight to the police station for using dirty money to shop is already out of respect for Mr. Shin. Shut up, it's all because of you, you bitch. Su Man lunged forward as if to claw at my face. I didn't even flinch. Zhu Cheng stepped forward in one swift motion and, with a backhanded slap, sent Su Man tumbling onto the sofa. Miss Su, mind your words. Zhu Cheng's voice was as cold as ice. Standing before you now is the chairman of the Su Group, and also the largest creditor of the Shun family. Shen Huiqing glanced at Su Man lying on the floor, a flicker of disgust flashing in his eyes, and made no move to help her up. Su Man, what exactly do you want? He slumped back into his chair, looking as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. What I want is simple. I stood up, straightened the wrinkles on my suit, and looked down at him from above. First, I have already gathered 40% of the retail shares of Shun Group, and combined with what I originally held, I am now the largest shareholder of Shun Group. Second, I want you to personally leave this office, take down the sign of Shun Group, and replace it with the banner of Su Group. You want to swallow Shun Group? Shen Huiqing laughed incredulously. Su Man, your appetite is too big, not swallowing, but reclaiming. I walked to the window and looked out at the overcast sky. How much of Shun Group's every brick and tile was built by appropriating Su Group's technology and connections, you know? At best, I am simply taking back what belongs to me. At that moment, my phone rang. It was a text message from Mr. Gu, the mysterious business tycoon I had recently befriended. Mr. Su, the 300 million yuan that Shen Huiqing secretly transferred overseas has been intercepted by me. Should we set it on fire now? I replied with one word, burn. In less than 3 minutes, Shen Huiqing's phone started ringing frantically, as if it were exploding. Mr. Shen, it's bad. The tax bureau people are downstairs. Also, that life-saving money we were about to transfer to the overseas supplier was attacked by an unknown hacker during the transfer, and now its whereabouts are unknown. Assistant Lin's voice echoed in the hallway. Filled with despair, Shen Huiqing froze, then suddenly looked at me. Was it you, that Mr. Gu is also one of your people, Mr. Shen, in business? We speak business. I walked to the office door, paused, and glanced back at him one last time. You always used to say I only knew how to stay at home and spend money. Now you see, I not only know how to spend money, but I also know how to bring down empires. I strode out of Shun Group headquarters. Outside, countless media reporters swarmed forward. I faced the camera, elegantly removed my sunglasses, and smiled brightly. Everyone, starting today, Shun Group will officially be renamed Su Technology. As for the former CEO, Mr. Shen Huiqing, he is currently cooperating with relevant authorities in an investigation due to suspicions of multiple financial frauds and illegal embezzlement of funds. At the back of the crowd, I saw Shen's mother trembling as she tried to push her way forward. The corner of her once elegant cheongsam had been torn in the chaos. looking both comical and pitiful as I passed by her. She suddenly grabbed the hem of my dress, tears streaming down her face. Man, please save Huiqing. Mom knows she was wrong. I'll never make you wash my feet again. I'll wash yours. Okay, I'll wash yours for you. Won't that do? I bent down, gently pried her fingers away, my movements tender yet resolute. Mom, things like washing feet should be left to your future daughter-in-law, Su-man. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, the child in Su-man's belly actually isn't Shen Huiqing's. All those gold accessories you worked so hard to save up will probably have to be spent on legal fees. After hearing this, Shen's mother rolled her eyes and collapsed to the ground. I stepped into the waiting car in my high heels without looking back. As the car started smoothly, I watched the Shen family building grow smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror. There was no sense of vengeful satisfaction in my heart, only a quiet peace after being set free. Next stop, where to? Ju Cheng asked. To the lab. I closed my eyes. That server, sealed away for 5 years, needs to be fully activated now. Shen Huiqing, this is just the beginning. I will make you watch as the reputation, status, and wealth you value most crumble like sandcastles under the tide. And I will. When the investigation team from the audit office entered Shen Group Tower, the entire building seemed shrouded in a thick, leaden grey gloom. Once, Shen Huiqing had been the untouchable god who ruled here, but now, the executives who had once bowed and scraped before him were scrambling to haul out documents, terrified that even a second's delay would sweep them into the hurricane known as financial fraud. I sat in the surveillance room on the top floor of the Su Group, watching the chaos unfold at the Shen headquarters on the screen. Ju Cheng handed me an urgent financial verification report, his brow slightly furrowed. President Su, Shen Huiqing indeed left a backup plan. The 3 billion he transferred is just the tip of the iceberg. His true core assets have all been mortgaged to an overseas shell company called Manning Investment, and the legal representative of this company is actually Su-man, Manning Investment. I sneered, my fingertips tracing Su-man's smug face on the screen. Shen Huiqing is trying to play the cicada shedding its shell, leaving the debt with the Shen Group while laundering the high-quality assets for his mistress and illegitimate child. He probably thinks a woman like Su-man, with no brains, is the easiest to control. Unfortunately, he miscalculated one thing. Ju Cheng adjusted his glasses, a hint of mockery in his expression. Su-man is greedier than he imagined, and also more foolish. I set down my coffee cup, stood up, and straightened the cuffs of my emerald green velvet suit. Let's go to the hospital. Isn't old Mrs. Shen suffering from a heart attack, as her former daughter-in-law? How could I not deliver a grand gift to repay her for those years of meticulous guidance she gave me? The VIP ward area of the hospital should have been quiet and solemn, but before I could even get close, I heard a sharp, piercing argument cutting through the soundproof door. Su-man, you jinx, you said the child was Huiqing's, but whose bastard is it according to the paternity test? Mother Shen's shrill voice carried a desperate, hoarse tone. Old woman, don't you dare act all high and mighty with me just because you're old. Su-man's voice was even more brazen and unrestrained. Shen Huiqing is about to go to prison now. Do you really think I'd stick with that poor loser? Let me tell you the truth. The property deed is in my name, and the assets held by Manning Investment are mine too. You want to stay in the hospital? Fine, pay up, otherwise, pack your things and get out of this ward right now. The moment I pushed the door open, I saw Su-man wearing a flashy, fiery red miniskirt, holding a designer handbag, and pointing at Mother Shen, who was lying helplessly on the hospital bed. As she hurled insults, Mother Shen's face was deathly pale, her oxygen mask askew, and her trembling finger pointed at Su-man, unable to utter a single word for a long time. Oh, looks like I've come at a bad time. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, my tone light and breezy. The commotion in the room came to an abrupt halt. Su-man saw me, froze for a moment, and then a twisted sense of superiority spread across her face. Su-man, referring to the original wife, what are you doing here? Come to watch the show. Let me tell you, even though the Shen family has fallen, the assets in my hands are enough to last me several lifetimes. That Su family of yours will sooner or later be dragged down by Shen Huiqing. I walked slowly to the hospital bed, not even glancing at Suman, just staring down at Mother Shin from above. "Mom, look, this is the wonderful daughter-in-law you handpicked and insisted on bringing home to replace me." I leisurely took out an expensive bottle of Bordeaux red wine from my bag and, right in front of them, slowly pulled out the cork. "Suman, man, I beg you, please save Huiqing. This woman is a fraud." Mrs. Shin struggled to grab my hand, but I deftly avoided her. I poured red wine into 2 crystal-clear goblets, handing one to Suman and holding the other in my own hand. "Miss Su, you just said that the assets of Manning Investment are yours." I took a small sip of red wine, my gaze suddenly turning cold. "Then do you know that when Manning Investment was registered overseas, the underlying collateral used was the patent licensing fees from my 3 factories? In other words, Shin Huiqing used my money to build your dream of getting rich." Suman's face instantly turned pale. "You're lying. Huiqing signed those documents himself." When Shin Huiqing signed, Shin Corporation had already entered the bankruptcy protection period. I set down my wine glass, my movements elegant yet suffocatingly oppressive. "According to the law, all assets he transferred during this phase are invalid, and, since you, as the legal representative, participated in the asset transfer, you not only won't get a single cent now, but you'll also be held liable for 300 million in joint debt. Congratulations, Miss Su, you are now the city's most wealthy woman with the highest net worth and the most debt." Suman's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "No, that's impossible. He clearly said this was our safety net." She lunged at me frantically, only to be pinned against the wall by the bodyguards stationed at the door. I turned around and looked at Shin's mother on the hospital bed, already weakened from exhaustion. She now seemed as if her very backbone had been pulled out after hearing my words. "Mom, you used to love having me wash your feet, saying it could cool you down and reduce internal heat. Today, I specially brought this bottle of wine to fulfill our final bond as mother-in-law and daughter-in-law." I tilted the red wine bottle in my hand, and the crimson liquid, like blood, poured completely into the wash basin beside the hospital bed. "The Shin family is gone, the villa has been seized, and those precious relatives of yours have been taken away for suspected money laundering." I leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Oh, by the way, I also found the biological father of that illegitimate child. He's a gambler drowning in high-interest loans, and is now waiting outside your old house with the creditors to pick up the young master." "Phut, Mrs. Shin suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood, her eyes wide open, and she fainted dead away. I straightened up expressionlessly, took out a wet wipe, and cleaned my fingertips. "Ju Cheng, notify the bailiffs. Suman is suspected of fraud and embezzlement. She can be taken away now." Suman was dragged away amidst screams, leaving only the piercing alarm of the medical equipment in the hospital room. I walked out of the hospital, the sunlight somewhat glaring. Shin Huiqing was currently being held in the interrogation room. He thought he could turn the tables with the assets Suman had transferred, not knowing that the lifebuoy he had personally crafted was actually the gallows I had woven with my own hands. Back in the car, Ju Cheng handed over a tablet. "President Su, Shin Huiqing has requested to see you. He says he has the final segment of the core code for the Aurora project, the only key to restarting the Su family factory. He's using this as leverage, hoping you'll drop the charges." "The last piece of code," I sneered, my eyes filled with mockery. "Shin Huiqing is still too arrogant. Does he really think I've been wasting the past 5 years? His so-called core algorithm is actually a logical backdoor I deliberately left in the Su family's laboratory 5 years ago. The more he tries to fix it, the faster the Su family's factories will run, and his code will only devour itself like a virus." I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. "Tell him I won't see him. I want him to watch his empire turn to ashes, and then, in those ashes, I'll personally sign his confession." At that moment, on the other side of the city, workers were dismantling the logo of the Shin Group. The cold and aloof Shin Huiqing was now sitting behind iron bars, facing an audit report that would keep him in prison for the rest of his life. And I am heading towards a grander feast. The solemnity of the court settles in the shadows of the marble pillars, the air thick with a suffocating sense of gravity when Shin Huiqing was escorted into the defendant's dock by the bailiffs. His tailored suit was already slightly wrinkled, His once cold and aloof face appeared pale and defeated under the harsh fluorescent lights. Yet, he still straightened his back, and his deep eyes, upon seeing me seated in the front row of the gallery, flashed with a complex mix of hatred, resentment, and a glimmer of hope. "Sue Man, must you go this far?" he asked in a low, hoarse voice through the cold bars during the brief pause before the judge declared the court in session. I wore a pure black Audrey Hepburn-style long dress today, with a pearl necklace at the collar emitting a gentle yet cool glow. Without uttering a word, I elegantly opened the case file in my hands, which documented all the shady dealings of the SAHM Group over the past 3 years. All rise. The judge's gavel fell heavily, marking the beginning of the trial. The prosecutor, a top expert in the field whom I had hired at great expense, adjusted his glasses, his voice echoing through the hall. "Your Honor, the chain of evidence we have submitted is complete and conclusive. The defendant, Shen Huiqing, during his tenure as CEO of the SAHM Group, abused his position by fabricating the research project Aurora plan to appropriate the technological achievements of the SU Group. He is also suspected of embezzling public funds, misappropriating company assets, and engaging in large-scale financial fraud." Shen Huiqing's defense attorney attempted to refute. "Your Honor, these charges lack direct proof of motive, and the ownership of the core algorithm remains disputed." Controversy. I slowly stood up, breaking the silence in the gallery. With the judge's permission, I walked to the witness stand. I didn't bring a speech, but simply opened the tablet I had with me and connected it to the courtroom's large screen. "Mr. Shen, you've always believed that the underlying data of the Aurora project was inherited by you from the SU laboratory." I looked at him, a hint of mockery curling at the corner of my lips. "But you forgot the access control system of that lab, the encryption logic of every single file, were all personally written by me. Sue Man, you thought you had the key, but in reality, you only stepped into a safe I prepared for you 5 years ago." On the screen, a set of extremely complex code comparison diagrams was projected. "Everyone, please look. This is what the Shen family calls their self-developed algorithm, and this is a draft I left behind 5 years ago when I was an actuary for the SU family." Hidden in line 1024 of the code is a special character combination SMSHQ0518. My cool voice stirred 1,000 waves in the courtroom. SM stands for Sue Man, SHQ stands for Shen Huiqing, and 0518 is our wedding anniversary. Shen Huiqing, is this what you keep calling independent research and development? Shen Huiqing's face instantly turned from pale to ashen. He stared fixedly at that line of code, a symbol of irony that had once been his proudest, most confident medal, but now became the noose tightening around his throat. "This can't be. I specifically had someone rewrite the underlying logic," he roared uncontrollably, only to be pressed back into his seat by the bailiff. "Every module you had rewritten was under my surveillance." I took out a familiar black pen from my bag, the one I had swapped when he forced me to sign the agreement in his study. "This pen recorded how you instructed the financial director to falsify accounts in the study, how you planned to completely dilute my shares after the divorce, and even how you bribed suppliers to corner the Sue family." The recording was played in court. Shen Huiqing's cold and cruel voice clearly echoed through every corner. "That fool Sue Man, as long as she gets a little vanity from being Mrs. Shen, she'll obediently hand over the Sue family's old assets. Once the Aurora project goes public, I'll make her leave with nothing. Even the mansion left by that sick old man, I'll take it to pay off. Man's, the mistresses, debts." The media in the gallery frantically pressed their shutters. Shen Huiqing's public image completely collapsed. Beneath the facade of that cold, noble gentleman lay such a greedy and despicable soul. In addition, I looked at the jury, my tone turning solemn and sharp. Shen Huiqing is suspected of false capital contributions. The Manning investment he established overseas is actually a money laundering tool he used to transfer Shen family assets. Here is the handwritten testimony from MS. Sue Man, the so-called true love in Mr. Shen's words, written last night in exchange for a reduced sentence. I pulled out a stack of documents. In order to protect herself, Sue Man had already sold Shen Huiqing out completely in the interrogation room. This included how he had induced her to sign the legal representative contract and how he had used her name to borrow from loan sharks to cover the embezzlement of public funds. Shen Huiqing listened to this testimony and suddenly burst into a fit of wild laughter. "Su Man, you win. You've been scheming for so long, just to watch me fall into the abyss." He struggled to his feet, his eyes bloodshot. "Do you think you can rest easy just because you've won Shen Group? I've already pledged the 40% of retail shares to the loan shark company. They'll be coming for you soon." "Pledged," I repeated softly, my eyes filled with pity as if watching a clown. "Shen Huiqing, you probably don't know this. The controlling shareholder behind that loan shark company is the trust fund under the Su Group. In other words, every penny you borrowed was mine. All the shares you pledged were legally returned to the Su family 3 days ago." Shen Huiqing completely collapsed in the defendant's seat. His final trump card had actually been a trap I handed to him. "Defendant Shen Huiqing, do you have anything else to plead?" the judge asked sternly. Shen Huiqing remained silent. He looked at me, and in his eyes there finally emerged a profound fear and regret. He finally realized that the gentle woman who had washed his clothes and cooked his meals for 5 years at home, once stripped of her wife's shell, was a terrifying predator. The court announced a recess, with the verdict to be announced at a later date. I walked out of the courthouse, only to be met by a sea of media stretching as far as the eye could see. "CEO Su, what major moves do you plan to make after taking over Shen Corporation?" "CEO Su, I've heard that Shen Corporation is already heavily in debt. How do you intend to stop the losses?" I stopped in my tracks, faced the countless flashing lights, and revealed the most confident, radiant smile I had worn in the past 5 years. "The Shen family no longer exists. From today onward, it shall be called Su Starlight. As for cutting losses, in my dictionary, there is no such thing as cutting losses, only a complete takeover." I made my way through the crowd, where Mr. Gu was waiting for me beside a low-key black sedan. "Miss Su, that was quite a performance," Mr. Gu said, opening the car door for me, a hint of approval in his tone. "The best is yet to come," I replied, settling into the car. I glanced coldly at the scene outside the courthouse, where Mrs. Shen was surrounded by creditors, wailing and crying in despair. "Ju Cheng, notify everyone, we're going to carry out a forceful dismantling of all Shen family assets. I want the Shen family left without so much as a single intact piece of paper." The car window rose, cutting off the noise from outside. As I watched the scenery speeding past outside the window, the corner of my heart that belonged to Mrs. Shen finally collapsed completely, turning to dust. On the morning when the Shen Group announced its bankruptcy liquidation, the entire city was washed by a rare, bone-chilling downpour. The Shen building, once a symbol of power and status, was now crisscrossed with official seals, like a massive, desiccated specimen. I stood in the Su Group headquarters office across from the building, holding a cup of espresso that had long gone cold. Ju Cheng pushed the door open, carrying a court-approved asset disposal list that had just been issued. "President Su, all of the Shen family's real estate has been completely sealed off. Mrs. Shen and Lin Euro have been ordered by the court to vacate that hillside villa." According to the bodyguards on the scene, Mrs. Shen nearly got into a fight with the bailiffs over trying to hide 2 gold bars. Ju Cheng's tone carried a hint of undisguised mockery. "Gold bars." I set down my coffee cup and walked over to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the rain-blurred streets below. She used to always say that a daughter from the Su family marrying into the Shen family was reaching too high, and she even took the dowry I brought to help the Shen family's poor relatives. Now, she can't even take a single piece of paper with her. At that moment, a tragic farce was unfolding at the entrance of the hillside villa. Mrs. Shen, disheveled and with her hair in disarray, sat on the muddy lawn, clutching a Hermes crocodile skin bag tightly in her arms. That was the bag I had been forced to buy for her with the private savings my family had left me, for her 50th birthday. "Who dares to touch it? This is my stuff. I am the matriarch of the Shen family," Mother Shen screamed, her voice already hoarse. Lin Euro held the child who was wailing in terror, trembling as she stood to the side. Her once elegant white dress was soaked by the rain, clinging to her body in a pitiful and absurd manner. "Mom, stop making a scene, hurry and leave. The creditors are coming." Lin Yuro pleaded tearfully, tugging at Mother Shin. Get away from me, you jinx. If it weren't for you urging Huiqing to get a divorce, would the Shin family have fallen to this state? Mother Shin slapped Lin Yuro across the face, and the two instantly began to tussle, rolling on the once symbolic luxurious lawn, splashing mud all over themselves. At that moment, a black Bentley slowly pulled up at the entrance of the villa, holding a black bone-handled umbrella and stepping out in spotless high heels. I slowly descended from the car upon seeing me. Mrs. Shin seemed to have found a lifeline. She scrambled to my feet, trying to grab the hem of my skirt, but was coldly stopped by Ju Cheng. Man, save your mother, Mrs. Shin wailed. I know I was wrong to you before. I'll kowtow to you. Please buy this villa and let us keep living here, okay, even if it's just the basement. I looked down at her with a gaze as cold as ice. Mrs. Shin, you've remembered incorrectly. I've already bought this villa, however. I have no intention of letting it continue to be called the Shin residence. I pointed to the construction crew that had been waiting behind me for quite some time, holding a massive billboard in their hands. Starting tomorrow, this place will be renamed Sue's Women's Mutual Aid Shelter. I will specifically take in those poor women who have been abused by their husbands, mistreated by their in-laws, and left with nothing. As for you, I lowered my head slightly and chuckled softly under Shin's mother's horrified gaze. You used to love setting rules so much. How about I arrange a volunteer position for you, specifically responsible for cleaning the toilets? Shin's mother completely collapsed in the mud, her eyes vacant. Meanwhile, Shin Huiqing was sitting on the damp, narrow bed in the detention center. The television on the wall was broadcasting financial news. On the screen, I was dressed in a sharp professional suit, standing at the launch event of Sue's Starlight, confidently announcing our entry into the global chip market. Former CEO of Shin Group, Shin Huiqing, is facing over 20 years in prison for charges including money laundering and embezzlement. Shin Huiqing stared intently at the radiant version of me on the screen. He remembered 5 years ago, when I had just married him. My eyes filled with undeniable affection. I would even queue for 3 hours in heavy snow just because he casually mentioned wanting pastries from the north side of the city. 20 years, he murmured softly, a sound like a trapped animal's whimper escaping his throat at that moment. The door of the detention center was knocked. Shin Huiqing, someone is here to see you. He looked up with hope, thinking that I had finally softened and come to see him one last time. However, the ones who pushed the door open were several men in black suits with fierce, scowling faces. Mr. Shin, long time no see, the leader said, taking out a stack of IOUs and slamming them heavily against the iron bars. You owe us brothers 500 million in high-interest loans. We heard your old flame, Sue Man, the mistress, has run off, so this debt will have to be repaid by you slowly, right here in prison. Sue Man ran away. Shin Huiqing abruptly stood up. Should she have waited to be caught? The man sneered, pulling a photo from his pocket. By the way, President Sue, the legal wife, asked me to pass on a message. She said the Shin family's genes are too despicable. So she made a decision for you. That illegitimate child has already been sent to an orphanage. As for whether Sue Man can be found in the future, that's up to your fate. Shin Huiqing looked at the photo of his ruined family property and the outcome of being abandoned by everyone, finally breaking down. He clutched his head and let out a piercing, mournful scream. I sat in the back seat of the car, listening to Ju Cheng report on the situation inside the detention center. President Sue, Shin Huiqing's mental state is on the verge of collapse. Shin's mother and Lin Yuro got into a fight over a bag of instant noodles in the rental apartment, and the police have already intervened. I closed the tablet in my hand and turned to look out the window. The heavy rain had stopped, and a faint hint of dawn was rising on the distant skyline. These messy affairs, there's no need to report them to me anymore. My voice was calm and steady. They are already lying in the graves they dug with their own hands. And my journey has only just begun. Shin Huiqing, do you think I dismantled your company? No. What I dismantled was all your pride and illusions as a man, as a scion of a wealthy family. I want you to spend every minute and every second of your long prison sentence regretting that you underestimated the woman who once washed your feet. To the Sue's lab, I looked ahead. We must get the next generation architecture running today. The abandoned chemical plant in the suburbs stood with rusted steel beams casting menacing silhouettes in the dim twilight. The air was thick with the pungent smell of engine oil and the dampness of decay, while the wind whistled through broken window frames, sounding like choked sobs. I stepped out of the car alone, my leather shoes crunching crisply on the broken bricks and tiles. Ju Cheng's voice was tense in my earpiece. Director Su, the SWAT team is in position. Snipers have locked onto the 3 exits of the warehouse. As soon as he shows himself, we'll move in. No, hold off for now. I adjusted the collar of my trench coat. My gaze unusually calm. Someone like Shen Huiqing, if we don't make him admit his incompetence with his own words, he'll die with his eyes wide open. Pushing open the heavy, rusted iron door, a musty smell rushed toward me. Shen Huiqing sat on a discarded conveyor belt, holding a bottle of cheap liquor in his hand. His suit was already tattered, and his once cool, dignified eyes were now filled with a crazed, bloodshot intensity. Several gasoline barrels were piled beside him, and he toyed with a lighter in his hand. "Suman, you really came alone." He let out a self-mocking laugh, his voice as rough as sandpaper scraping the ground. "You used to be so afraid of the dark. You'd even hold my hand when going to the bathroom at night. Now, you're so brave." Shen Huiqing, people change. I stopped about 5 meters away from him, my expression unchanged. 5 years ago, I was afraid of the dark because I thought you were my light. Now, I'm not afraid anymore, because I've realized that the light was always my own. You just borrowed it. And now you want to extinguish it. Borrowed. Shen Huiqing suddenly stood up, the flame of the lighter flickering at his fingertips. The technology of the Su family, the status of the Shen family, which of these didn't I scheme for with everything I had? You were just lucky to have a good grandfather. Schemed with everything you had, I sneered, pulling a specially designed brooch from my pocket. With a light tap of my finger, a microprojector cast real-time data onto the mottled wall. "Take a look, Shen Huiqing. This is the overseas account you pinned your last hopes on. Just 3 minutes ago, as the chairman of the Su Group, I officially submitted all the closed-loop evidence of your money laundering to Interpol. The escape route you were so proud of has now become your own guillotine." Shen Huiqing stared at the flashing red crosses on the wall, the wine bottle in his hand shattering with a loud crash on the floor. "You've destroyed everything I had. Suman, why are you so ruthless?" He screamed hysterically, suddenly pulling a sharp knife from his waist and rushing over to press it against my neck. "Do you believe I'll drag you to your death right now? This warehouse is filled with gasoline." The cold edge of the blade pressed tightly against my skin, and I could even feel his hand trembling violently with fear. "Kill me." I stared straight into his eyes without a hint of retreat. "Shen Huiqing, you don't dare. Someone as utterly selfish as you values your own life more than anyone else. You kidnapped me just to use me as a bargaining chip to secure a private plane to leave the country." At that moment, the red light on my brooch flickered once. "Shen Huiqing, don't waste your efforts. Every word of our conversation just now, and the ferocious look on your face right now, is being broadcast live across the entire internet." A cruel smile curled at the corner of my lips. "Aren't you the one who cares most about your reputation? Now the whole city is watching. Watching how the once arrogant CEO of the Shen family is kidnapping his ex-wife like a rabid dog." "What did you say?" Shen Huiqing suddenly looked at my brooch, his face instantly turning deathly pale. "You thought you set a trap to lure me in, but in reality, I gave you one last chance to appear in public." I disdainfully pushed his blade away, the overwhelming sense of superiority stemming from class and intellect making him instinctively step back. "Look at the camera over there, Shen Huiqing. Your mother, your creditors, and Lin Euro, who's hiding in the gutter, are all watching you." In the distance, the urgent sound of police sirens echoed, with alternating red and blue lights illuminating half the sky. "Suman, you lunatic." Shen Huiqing slumped weakly beside the gasoline drum, the lighter in his hand slipping from his grasp. "Madman." I crouched down, meeting the eyes of the man who had controlled me for 5 years. "I've simply learned to treat you the way you treated me, Shen Huiqing. In the eyes of the law, you are a criminal. In the business world, you are scum, and in my eyes, you are no longer even worthy of being my opponent." The moment the SWAT team broke through the door, Shen Huiqing offered no resistance. He was like a soulless shell, allowing the cold handcuffs to lock around his wrists as he was escorted past me. He suddenly stopped and asked in a faint voice, "Su Man, even for a second, did you ever think about remarrying me?" I turned my head, looked at his face filled with despair, and gave him the gentlest yet coldest smile. "Remarry, Shen Huiqing. My current goal is the stars and the sea, and you are nothing more than a piece of trash I casually cleared away on my journey." I strode out of the abandoned factory. Outside, the night was deep, but the lights of the Su Group building were shining brightly through the night. On the first anniversary of the complete bankruptcy of the Shen Group, the city welcomed its first snowfall of the season. On the top floor of the Su Group building, outside the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, snowflakes fell like scattered diamonds, cutting the bustling neon silhouettes into a dreamlike illusion. Wearing a minimalist silver-gray satin gown, I stood alone, holding a cup of warm black tea, quietly gazing at the newly reshuffled commercial landscape beneath my feet. President Su, Shen Huiqing's second trial verdict has been announced. Zhu Cheng gently knocked on the door and placed a document stamped with a red seal on the marble desktop. Multiple charges combined, 25 years. I heard he applied to see you in prison, saying he wants to disclose the secret key to the overseas trust fund that Lin Yuru hid, in exchange for a little end-of-life care for his mother. Upon hearing this, I didn't even turn my head, merely idly fiddling with the black gold ring on my fingertip, a symbol of the highest authority within the Su family. "Does he still not know what happened to Lin Yuru?" I said calmly. "News just came in yesterday. She was caught cheating at an underground casino in Southeast Asia and had her fingers chopped off. Now she's begging in the slums with that child of unclear parentage. As for Mrs. Shen, since she's so fond of setting rules, the nursing home staff will take care of her for the rest of her life according to the strictest rules. The secret key, that outdated encryption logic, I can crack it in 3 seconds. I don't need his charity." Zhu Cheng understood and retrieved the document, his eyes filled with reverence. I spoke out of turn, "For tonight's Su family Starlight anniversary celebration. President Gu is already waiting for you downstairs." I slowly stepped into the elevator. The mirrored walls reflected my current appearance, sharp and profound eyes, with no trace left of the Mrs. Shen who used to revolve around the kitchen 5 years ago inside the banquet hall. The lights were dazzling and radiant. Those socialites and wealthy ladies who once mocked and ridiculed me at the Shen family's parties were now gathered around me like stars surrounding the moon, doing their utmost to flatter and please. "President Su, I heard your newly developed 6G foundational architecture has captured 80% of the global market share. Truly, a woman's achievements are no less than a man's. President Su, this is my good-for-nothing son. He just returned from Harvard and hopes to intern at Su Corporation." I moved through the crowd with polite detachment. Just then, a tall, upright man with a cold, aloof, and proud demeanor blocked my path. It was Mr. Gu, as rumored, young, dangerous, and possessing business acumen no less formidable than Shen Huiqing in his prime. "Su Man, congratulations." Mr. Gu raised his glass, his deep eyes gleaming with a light that could only be described as meeting a worthy opponent. "You dismantled the Shen family so thoroughly, not even leaving a single bone for the competitors. I truly admire such ruthlessness." "You flatter me, Mr. Gu." I clinked my glass lightly with his, the crisp sound cutting clearly through the noise. "I simply don't like sailing with a rotting anchor dragging behind me, clearing away the trashes. Every sailor's instinct." Mr. Gu lowered his head with a soft chuckle, a rare gentleness appearing on his handsome face. He leaned in slightly and whispered in my ear, just loud enough for the two of us to hear, "Well, since the trash has been cleared away, would you be willing to find a helmsman to sail alongside this great ship? The moonlight is lovely tonight. We could discuss future interstellar cooperation on the terrace. This is an incredibly tempting proposal, and it's the script of a powerful alliance that countless women dream of." I stopped in my tracks, turned around, and looked at this man who could drive any socialite wild. Then, I gracefully set down the wine glass in my hand and revealed a confident, composed smile. "Mr. Gu, the Su family already has thousands of helmsmen to sail alongside. I pointed to the technical experts busy with data exchange, then pointed to myself. But the owner of this ship will always be me alone. My current hobby is turning every man who tries to define women or control me into a milestone on my path forward. Mr. Gu was stunned for half a second, then let out a hearty laugh. There was no longer any trace of condescension in his eyes, only complete surrender. Lesson learned. President Su, you truly don't need anyone's salvation. I walked past him and headed toward the podium at the center of the hall. The spotlight instantly converged on me. I looked at the countless gazes raised toward me from below the stage and watched the Su family banner fluttering loudly in the wind. Everyone, over the past year, we have not only reclaimed our dignity but also reshaped the rules. In the Su family's dictionary, there is no such thing as dependence, only the ultimate self-awakening. Our journey is toward the stars and the sea, toward a future that cannot be defined. Applause erupted like a tidal wave, lasting for a long time without ceasing. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, behind cold iron bars, Shen Huiqing huddled in a corner, listening to my voice coming from the television on the wall. He had aged like dried-up wood, his trembling hand reaching out to touch the radiant queen on the screen. Man, I was truly wrong. However, the television screen switched to the next news segment about aerospace technology. His remorse, his tears, under the relentless wheels of time, couldn't even stir a speck of dust. I stood at the top of the Su Group building, watching the snowflakes fill the sky. I once thought marriage was a safe harbor, only to later discover it was an abyss that could drown a person. I once thought compromise was tolerance, only to later realize it was a sharp knife handed to a wolf. Now, I am no longer someone's wife, no longer someone's appendage. I, Su Man, am the pinnacle.